Well, hello, coaches. Welcome back. It's Coach KW here for another futsal video. This is the second of three. Today, we're going to talk about playing out of the back. My first video, I talked about formations and shapes and how to attack and defend. And what's different about futsal is that it's so fluid. So while you have a formation, it's not as rigid as the outside game. Today, we're going to talk about playing out of the back. And I really harp on playing out of the back on the outdoor game because it's really a vital component of learning at 7v7 and 9v9. But in futsal, it's a unique animal because the space is so compressed, because it's so compact. It can be a real challenge for soccer teams that are playing futsal. Now, again, I'll say this as I've said before, I am not a futsal expert. There are plenty of ways to play out of the back. Futsal is a beautiful game. It's complicated. It can be elegant. There can be lots of rotational movements. But usually, as a soccer coach, playing futsal in an off season in an indoor environment as an alternative, you don't have the time to really get into some of all those nuances and complexities that happen with playing futsal. Again, we're soccer coaches who happen to play futsal on the side, and so am I. What I'm going to show you is some of the ideas that I use with my teams that have been successful. Again, they're just my ideas. They've worked to varying degrees, but giving your team a bunch of different options can really just give them, again, some more flexibility when they're playing the game to change it up so they're not so predictable. So we're going to look at some more slides, move some dots around, and talk about how you might play out of the back and different ways you can set up your team to be successful to try and beat the pressure that comes with playing futsal on such a small court. So let's take a look at those now. Okay, so as I mentioned in the intro, playing out from the back is challenging in futsal because the space is so compact. When your keeper has the ball after a save or it goes out for a quote unquote goal distribution, there's no goal kicks in futsal, so they roll the ball out. And remember, once they roll that ball out, they can't touch it again unless the other team touches it. So you can't use that player, that keeper, to be that spare player that you do in the outside game to create, overloads and outnumbered situations where you can play back to the keeper. Once that keeper lets go of the ball, they can't touch the ball again without incurring a indirect free kick unless the other team touches the ball first. So it makes it a little bit even more challenging playing out of the back. So we're going to look at two different setups. We're going to look at a balanced setup where you have players on either side of the keeper, and then we're going to look at an unbalanced setup where there's a player either on one side or the other of the keeper. The trick to playing out of the back is having reactions for the players who don't have the ball, whether they're predefined or they're instinctual and rehearsed in terms of being able to be fluid with each other. But the idea is you've got to be looking for the spaces so that once that ball gets played and the pressure comes up being applied very quickly, that player who has the ball has an option close to their net to get the ball up and out. So you got to remember too that as defenders start just outside the top of the arc or the 10-meter line, depending on your league. It may, but nonetheless, they're pretty close. They're not at halfway. They're closer than that. So that pressure comes really quickly. So let's take a look at a balanced setup. And balanced, I mean, there are players on both sides of the court on either side of the keeper. So you can see the keeper has the ball, and the options they have are outlined mostly in the white. They can roll the ball out to one of the two wide players, or they can try and play that long ball out to one of the far players. Keep in mind that most leagues, the ball cannot travel in the air past the top of the arc or sometimes this line, depending on the league, because they're trying to encourage the play to be played out and rolled out. But this is always an option, right? Going long, it makes it difficult. As that ball travels, everybody knows where it's going. It's easier to get on top of that player. But the idea of playing out of the back here is that when the ball gets rolled out, these other players have to make reactions, whether they're in the direction of these lines, based on the reactions of the defenders. You can see this team is set up in a 2-2. They're going to press here. So when that ball goes out here, this player is going to start rushing in. You can't play this ball back to your keeper. That would be a free kick right at the spot of the foul. So now this player has to find a way to get themselves up and out. And whether that means being able to play that ball up the line, whether that means this player coming into this space and getting on the diagonal, or as it means this player tucking in, blocking off this player and using it either as a 1-2 or as a play up to here. You really have to work out those situations to make sure that you can get that ball up and out safely. So in a balanced situation, when the ball goes to one side or the other, what usually happens, whoops, that was the player. What usually happens is that you have some sort of set of rules or suggestions for your players that are pushed up and out to do. Many times on my teams, if the ball goes to one side, then the opposite player and here, their job is to try to get into this center spot in front of this defender as a diagonal option. It may not come straight to the center spot. They may be looking to get to here to get a good passing angle there. But again, it's all based on the reactions of what the defense does. This player may instead drop in to make a quick pass up, but if this player starts here or cuts that run off, then there's got to be an option where maybe this player steps in, receives the ball, and now they can either bypass this pressure or now play that ball here, or perhaps this player is moved into this spot and they can play direct. But again, the idea is giving your players some structure so that they have a way to go once they get the ball. Again, very fluid. So that was a balanced setup. And an unbalanced setup, there aren't two players back there. There's just one on either side. And we're going to take a look at what that looks like here. Now, this unbalanced setup is actually a little bit more like the outdoor game because usually the ball is going to go off to one of your defenders and you're going to have a player, perhaps a 6 or an 8, standing in the middle of the field plus these wide players. So sometimes playing unbalanced is a great way to start the process because it's a little bit more familiar. But you can see here, because it's unbalanced, the keeper has to play it in one direction. And once that happens, now these players know what's going on, and you've got to, again, have these players move into positions based on where the defense is in order to get this ball. It could be that this player can take a quick touch and get up the field because they don't want to necessarily be going 1v1 on this play, because if they lose it, there's nobody there to help except from the backside. Now they have a free shot at your keeper. So again, just like the balance setup, you've got these options. Perhaps this player drops in while this player drops in, and as this pressure comes in, they can play a 1-2 out and around that way. Perhaps this player can get it and turn and then just simply drive with the ball past the pressure and everybody moves up. Perhaps this player can make this cut in here, and if this pressure doesn't cut that line off, they're able to do this. This play can go away and maybe they drag this player with them up the line. So it's all about read and react when the ball is in play. So as we talked about, each player has to react to each other player. They have to see what the defense is doing and see what their teammates are doing and to move into supportive positions. Having some set rules to begin with can help, but you have to say to your team, this is one of many scenarios, but at least this is a fallback that if you're not sure what to do, start with this. So we're going to say, look at that example. If the ball is rolled to one side, then this is what we want our players to usually do. Ball's on this side, so now the opposite player is going to make that move into the middle of the court, and this player here is going to move into the middle here to try and cut that off. And this player then has to make a decision based on what else is going on. Do I step in? Do I stay back and keep this player from getting too close? So having a set of rules to say, hey, this is how in an ideal situation we might want to do this is a way to do it. Now, there are some other ways to do this. You can get creative. Nothing says the keeper has to stand in the middle of the goal. The keeper could take the ball out here and your defender could step into the middle here, and now the defender rolls the ball to the middle, which causes a new set of problems for these defenders, because if they're not ready for it, now this player has a direct shot as the team comes in to perhaps this player. Or maybe they both abandon who they're supposed to go to. While this player can't play it back to the keeper, they can play it to this player who maybe is starting to move up and out and around. So you can get tricky. You can even, when this keeper rolls the ball out, this player can play it as a dummy and let it go directly to this player, again, causing confusion, creating different ways to have this ball come out from the back. So you can also choose to try and play and go over that front pressure by throwing long or moving your players up the court. But you have to understand too, when you do that, you're compressing the space that the other team has to defend because now all your players are in that half of the field. And also have to remember that there's rules in most leagues that you can't throw the ball in the air beyond a certain point, usually the top of the arc, maybe another line, maybe the 10-meter line. But the idea is that trying to encourage players to play out of the back. So you have to remember you can't just play a long ball into the corner and go from there. That really kind of limits it. Although having that no offside rule can help you stretch that court. So if you see here, we've pushed our players up against this purple team. This purple team starts to drop back. But when they do start to drop back, they are condensing where they are needing to defend, making it harder to receive this ball as it comes up. Notice I have this player way down here in the corner. A ball thrown in the air to this player would be whistled dead because the ball crossed this line in the air, which is a no-no. So again, plenty of options, but perhaps you do this every once in a while. You empty your backfield, to use an American football metaphor, and push these players back, and then check into the space where now you can start to play. As these players start to come out, it opens up more spaces for teammates to move into new locations. So again, mixing up your playing out of the back is the best way to keep the defense that you're playing against unbalanced. But doing these sorts of drills with your players to give them their options to say, hey, here is one of many ways we can do this. You ultimately have to trust your players to understand you have to play what's in front of you. If they're only pressing with one player, how can you take advantage of that one player? If they're pressing with two or three, can you play over them? If they're balanced, can we figure out how to play around and through them to get the ball up the court? So playing out of the back is challenging, but it's a rewarding feature of the game because if you can solve this puzzle, it just means that your team is getting that much better at reading and reacting to what's in front of them, which is what ultimately what you want is you want them to be better decision makers on the field. All right, so there's a quick rundown how you might think about playing out of the back in futsal. It's a fluid, challenging game because the spaces are tight, so you really have to give your players multiple options. You start out perhaps with a few rules, but you have to understand very quickly those rules are meant to be broken. They have to read and react to what's in front of them and then figure out what they're going to do. So giving your team the tools to say, here's one of three, four, five different ways that you could go, and then letting them scrimmage and figuring it out on their own and mimicking some of that pressure is the best way for them to learn because the game is fluid. It's never the same twice. But I hope this video, again, is part of 3 videos I have going on. The first video is formations and shapes, both attacking and defending. Here we're talking about how we play out of the back because it's kind of unique in futsal. And the last video we'll talk about is some of my favorite activities during practices that I do to help work on some of those concepts of futsal that can help your players learn to be more fluid in their movements, in their shapes, and just be more proficient with the ball. So please share, like, subscribe. Make sure you watch those other videos and keep an eye out for them. And until next time, I hope I see you on the court or the field real soon. Bye.